Every space has a constraint, unless of course you have a Kardashian budget. So the thing is, you have to choose your flavor of trouble. Hi everyone, welcome to my channel. I recently did a masterclass for a peer here on how to create and launch your pop-up shop, so I thought that I would bring it to YouTube. If you're a business or a brand and you're thinking of having a physical shop or a pop-up, you'll definitely find this video valuable. To give you a bit of context, Janet's List, which is my business, has had a number of pop-up concept stores. We've had 3 standalone pop-up concept stores in Shoreditch, Islington and Amsterdam. We had collaborations with Somerset House and Coco in October 2020. So it's something I know quite a bit about. You know, we've had thousands of customers come through our door. We featured over 35 brands. And I also have a self-paced course on how to create and launch your pop-up. So I'm going to pop the details for that in the description box below. And I'm going to talk a little bit more at the end about the course itself. So stick around to hear more if that's something that you're interested in. Now, to get back to it, one of the questions you might be asking yourself as a brand is, how do I know whether a pop-up is a good idea for my business? You might be a brand that has a lot of traction online, but for some reason you're just not able to get into physical mainstream retail stores. Or it could be that you have a really active community and they keep asking you, where can we come and find you things? When are you going to have a physical pop-up? It's about listening to those signals of people wanting to interact with your brand in a physical space. It might be that you're a multi-brand or a retailer and you want to test the brands in your portfolio. That's certainly the reason why I had my first ever pop-up shop a couple of years ago. It could be that you have products that just work better in person. So maybe people want to touch, with things like interiors or homeware, or people want to smell, so with things like candles, and it's a sort of thing that just lends itself to being in a physical retail space. Perhaps you're thinking about having a permanent shop and you just want to test a number of locations. If I ever had ambitions to have a permanent shop, there is no way I would sign a lease for a permanent shop without testing a few different pop-up locations. The other thing to remember is that pop-ups, it's not just about selling. There's so many other things that you can do with the space. It could be that you're bringing your brand to life so that investors can come and check you out and have a better sense of what you're doing. It could be that you're trying to attract buyers for big retail chains, and so you invite them over so they can just get a flavor and a sense of what your brand is. Ultimately, you have to determine what the goals are. But in my experience, as challenging and as complex as it can be to have your shop or your business in a physical retail space, it's one of the best things that I've done for my business. If you're finding the information in this video useful and you're enjoying it, there's more where that came from. Subscribe to the channel so that you can be notified every time a new video comes out. Choosing a location is more of an art rather than a science, but there are lots of different things that you can take into consideration. Ultimately, it's got to tie into your goals. So it might be that you're having a pop-up because you want a place that is easy for your customers to find you offline, and that feeds into the location that you're selecting. Or it could be that you're targeting a whole new audience, and that factors into the location that you've gone for. It's a very delicate balance between trying to keep costs down as much as possible, but at the same time trying to get the best location that your money can buy. Another reason for choosing a particular location is that the existing brands align with your brand. By putting yourself in that location, you're stacking the deck in your favor. Go for an area that you know really well and be prepared to do your due diligence. So for example, when I decided to have my pop-up shop in Shoreditch, it's an area that I knew really well, but more importantly, it was an area that I thought would resonate for the existing customers that I have, but also the potential customers that I wanted to acquire. And when I talk about doing due diligence, it's not a joke. I literally, if I've identified a particular shop that I want to have my pop-up, I will spend a lot of time in the area. I will sit in a coffee shop across the road and count the number of people that are going by. I'll look at the sort of footfall. Is it people who are browsing or shopping, or is it people who are marching straight to the tube? All of these are factors that you want to be thinking about when picking the right location. One other thing that I always try and do is to visit the location when the weather is bad, because then that gives you an idea of when it's at its worst, how does this particular location perform? And just on that point about footfall should be the bonus, not the bulk of the foot traffic that you're relying on to bring people to your shop. When you're going to check out your potential pop-up locations, it is so important to have a list of all of the details that you want to look into. And in the course, one of the things that I've shared is a checklist that I use when I'm going to suss out the location. it's so easy to get drawn into the aesthetics of the shop, how cute it looks, what the flooring is like. Those things are important, but what's really important are the practical details as well. Top of that list is security. For me, if I have a shop that has a security gate, tick. Things like the toilets, does the shop have toilets, or where are the closest toilet facilities? Storage is such an important factor to take into consideration. Wi-Fi and how good or strong the Wi-Fi is definitely something that you want to test in the location. I certainly always test the Wi-Fi in the location, but I always have backup Wi-Fi as well. It's so easy to get into the checklist and all of the stuff that you have to do with renting the space, but it's so important to trust your instincts and to allow space for magic. When you go into a space, you should be able to visualize what your shop could look like. You should be able to feel like, oh my God, this space is just exactly where I want to be. I'll give you a little example. When I decided that I was going to have a pop-up shop in Amsterdam, I saw the space that I ended up in online, and it's the first time that I've seen a space online and I just knew that it was the right space for me. I got in touch with the landlord, didn't hear anything back. So I just booked a Eurostar ticket on like Thursday or Friday, and I emailed and I said, look, I'm going to be in Amsterdam on Tuesday and I'm looking at spaces, and I just wondered whether I could come and look at your space as well, because I think it would be a really good fit for what I was doing. It was a shoe shop, and I knew that the landlord loved shoes, so I wore the best pair of shoes that I own. Like, I think it's the first time in my life I went to view a space wearing high heels, but I did it. Anyway, I got there and we got into the conversation, and he just sort of got what I was trying to do with Janet's list, and he loved it. And I just didn't beat around the bush. I said to him, I'm viewing a few other spaces, but if you give me this shop, I will take it. I just think it is absolutely perfect for what I'm doing. And so one of the reasons why I knew that shop would be perfect was just it had this amazing windows. The window display was all set up. The shelving was perfect. And so practically it meant for me as a brand that was bringing other brands across to Amsterdam, I didn't need to do anything with the shop. We could just get there, put everything on the shelves in the shops, and would be ready to go, which is exactly what you need when you're having a pop-up shop in another location. Whereas in London, I'd be prepared to have a bit more flexibility about what the shop looks like. Every space has a constraint, unless of course you have a Kardashian budget. So the thing is, you have to choose your flavor of trouble. You have to work out what is it about that space that's a bit of a disadvantage, but I can definitely work around it, or I can compensate for it. So going back to the perfect shop in Amsterdam, there was a spiral staircase in the corner that looked really cute in all of the Instagram photos. The problem is the stockroom was on the first floor. So you can imagine having to haul a week's worth of stock up those stairs. It was a complete nightmare. We were completely broken once it was over. And at the end of the pop-up, I asked the landlord why he was leaving this amazing shop, and he just said to me, to be honest, I am fed up with the stairs. I've been climbing up and down the stairs for 9 years and I can't take it anymore. So again, choose your flavor of trouble. There's always going to be a disadvantage with every space that you see. You just have to be able to work out if you can work around it. It's never too early in the process to work out how you're going to draw people to your pop-up shop. In my course, I actually go into quite a bit of detail of all of the different considerations that I took into play, but I'm just going to pick out a few things that I think would be helpful for you to consider. Having a pop-up shop is a really exciting thing. I get it. And although it is important to work out how your shop will look, the best time and money that you can spend is figuring out how you're going to get people to your pop-up shop. This is one of the most important things, and you'll be surprised how people leave this to the last minute. It comes down to what you have more of. Do you have more time or do you have more money? Because that's going to factor into the plans that you make for drawing people to your shop. If you're on a tight budget, then you need to carve out the time and accept that you're going to spend a lot of time attracting people to the shop. If you have more money, then you need to be thinking about the strategies that you're going to put in place to draw people to your shop. Drawing people to your pop-up shop means that you have to use a holistic approach. You have to throw everything at it. So for example, at certain points, I've worked with a paid PR consultant. This is not something that everyone has to do, but for me, with my very first pop-up shop, and given that I was trying to do something that was really different, it was worth the investment to do that. And we got amazing press in Stylist and Time Out, and that no doubt had an effect in bringing people to the shop. I've also secured my own PR. Again, the time and money thing. If you don't have the money to work with a PR consultant, then you need to put the time in to make sure that you secure your PR and you get your story out there and you get journalists to be interested in what it is that you're trying to do in your pop-up space. One of the approaches that has worked really well for Janet's List is working with influencers in our pop-up shops. I definitely wouldn't have a pop-up shop without figuring out how to work with influencers in some shape or form. Of course, you have your social media platforms at your disposal. I think one of the things that you find is there tends to be an over-reliance on social media and an underuse of email newsletters. Whereas what I'd say is, email newsletters are a really powerful form of communication. Those are people who've signed up to get information from you. Make sure that you have a strategy for email communication for the period when your pop-up shop is running and the period leading up to that. Because what happens, the closer you get to the pop-up shop, the to-do list completely explodes. And sitting down to write a newsletter is one of the things that might get pushed down the list, whereas it is one of the most important ways of getting people to come and visit your pop-up shop. Events are a really simple way of bringing people to the space. It could be planned events where you're selling tickets and you're getting people to come and attend, although of course you have to think about the implications of that on your budget in terms of the team and the coordination and all of that. But there's some really simple wins when it comes to events. Frankly, everyone should have a family and friends event when they have the pop-up. You text all your friends, get them to bring a friend as well. It's just about bringing people to the space and getting the word out there. If you're planning for a pop-up shop, particularly if you're doing it for the first time, all of the plans that you have in place to draw people to your shop, double them. We all know that COVID has had a huge impact on physical retail, and it'll be no surprise that when we go back to the new normal or whatever it is, the high streets are going to look very different. That said, there might be some opportunities for pop-up shops, and there might be brands who have only sold online who will be thinking about having a pop-up shop for the first time. So here are some thoughts about different ways in which you can translate your brand from online to offline. It's so important to create a vibe for your brand. People will have a certain perception of your brand based on social media, based on your website. And so the key is to translate that for the physical space you're in. I'll give you an example of Janet's List. We tend to have a pop-up shop over Christmas. But for me, our approach and our design is that it's bold, simple, and sophisticated. So we tend to have white and black interiors wherever possible with pops of yellow. I'm always aiming for a balance between Janet's List as a brand, but also creating the space for the brands in Janet's List to stand out. So now, how does that translate to creating a vibe? One of the things that I don't do is spending time and money on Christmas decorations that we'll only use once and then we'll throw them away. Whilst we don't decorate the shops for Christmas, the aim for me is to evoke the feeling and the vibe of Christmas when you walk into the shop. It means coming into a space that feels warm, that feels like a hug, that you have lovely music playing in the corner, which just creates a relaxing, soothing feeling. What I'm trying to do is to create space for people to land and to spend time. And in doing that, they will discover brands and they will do their shopping and they'll get to know our mission and what we're trying to do a little bit more, just by virtue of the kind of space that we're creating. There are many people who have started businesses in lockdown, maybe have never ever sold in person, so not sold in markets or anything like that, and they'll be going straight to their pop-up shop. So you need to learn how to be comfortable selling in person. It means reading the signals of people who come into the shop and want to have a conversation and people who want to be left to browse quietly. And of course with COVID, there are practical things where there are certain people who would want just to click and collect. They might not necessarily want to come and spend time in the shop, but they want to be able to support your business. And so you need to be able to make sure that logistically, all of that is set in place for click and collect shopping. You need to treat everyone who comes through the door the same, with a smile, with enthusiasm, because you simply do not know who's coming through the door. I had a situation where a lady came in, she's obviously a grandma, she's pushing a buggy. The shop was so busy and she said, I'm gonna come back. And so she came back a week later, and as she came through the door, I instantly recognized her because she was a lady who'd visited a couple of days before. And then she shopped up a storm, and then she said to me, oh yeah, by the way, I'm the founder of the Wow Festival, which is a festival that I love. All of my staff have been to, and we were so excited to have her in the shop. Now, she just came off the street, and we treated her exactly the same way during both of her visits. But I think the point I'm trying to make is you simply do not know who's going to come into the shop, and you don't know what that will lead to. What that's meant for us is a collaboration with Wow, where we curated the first ever virtual marketplace, and I'm sure we'll be working with them again in the future. So try and keep the energy positive and consistent during the duration of your pop-up shop. Your shop window is like a physical version of the website. So make sure you use every little bit of real estate in your shop window. Make sure that the items look good, that they're well lit, that you've put your social media handles and your website on the shop window. This is like a physical representation of your website that's going to be working for you 24/7, even when the shop is closed. So just make sure that you don't leave money on the table by missing out simple tricks, putting your opening hours, putting the duration of the pop-up so people can tell when the pop-up is starting and when it's ending. All of these little things that enable you to maximize the time that you have in that particular location. When you have a physical shop, it's a real opportunity for you to show deep knowledge of your product. So really step into that. Take advantage of it. Work with your team to maximize that. I mean, I'm very lucky to have a fantastic team in our pop-up shops. And so we do not let go of any opportunity to get people to understand the value of the products that we have in our physical spaces. One thing that brands are going to have to consider is how to do physical retail in the context of COVID. Now, this is something I had experience of in 2020 when we had our pop-up in Somerset House in the main shop, and when we had to set up for our pop-up in Coco. The thing I would say is that it is so important to have backup for your team, for yourself. Make sure that if you're not able to attend for whatever reason, or if a member of your team is not able to attend, that you have backup and you have someone who knows and understands how your business functions. So one of the practical things that I looked into is dividing our team into two so that we would have particular members who would be there but not mix with each other. So that if for whatever reason one of us had to go into isolation, then we hadn't been in touch with the other half of the team. So it's just thinking really creatively about ways to make sure that the show can keep running, even though some of the people either become ill or have to self-isolate for whatever reason. The second point is the importance of safety. Now you're trying to strike that balance between safety and fun, but ultimately at the end of the day, safety has got to take priority. Making sure that your staff are using PPE, making sure customers coming in are using hand sanitizers, visibly being seen to maintain the cleanliness of the space that you're in. You have to do these things to reassure customers and people coming to your space that it is safe and it is clean. It's important to spell out really clearly what the social distancing measures are in the shop, but also think about the common touch points. So things like door handles, tills, which the staff will be touching a lot, making sure that people don't, use testers. Ultimately, you have to look at the guidance that the government has put in place and follow that to the letter, not just for the safety of your team, but also to reassure your customers. Here are my final tips. I would say it's important to control costs while your pop-up is running. I mean, I'm the type of person, I like vibes, I like cute things. I'm always gonna choose vibes over budget. But in these situations, my business brain takes priority. So you have to set a figure beyond which you're not gonna exceed when it comes to expenses. If your expenses shoot up, that's going to eat into your profit. So it's so important to control costs. And a practical tip I would give is just logging your expenses every single day in the run-up and during your pop-up. In your pop-up shop, you're going to have a team. And it's important for you to step into that leadership role and delegate properly. Don't try to do everything. Work out what your team's strengths are and play to those strengths. In my team, I know who is really good at bringing people to the shop. He's going to be standing outside getting people in. I know who is really good at understanding the ingredients and differentiating between the different products. She's going to step in when the customer has particular questions. I know one of my team can sell anything to anyone. She's fantastic at getting upsells in the space. I know I have all of the deeper knowledge of the brands and the founders, and if it's something that people are interested in, then I've got to be able to step in and do that. So just make sure you play to the strengths of your team and that you delegate properly rather than trying to do everything yourself. With the landscape of retail changing and so much more space becoming available, we know sadly that it's because a lot of shops are shutting, but at the same time, there are going to be opportunities for pop-ups. So you've got to turn your lemons into lemonade. Like, I can think back to times when I was trying to get commercial space and you're competing with big brands who have deep pockets, and it was just so frustrating. I don't know what it'll look like when we open up, but I have a feeling that neighborhood shops in particular are going to be thriving. So if you're offered an opportunity for a pop-up space, take it. And if it's very last minute, that's literally what my course is for. Finally, it's so important to have fun. This is about your brand, and you have to find ways to inject fun into it. In my pop-up shops, I need very little convincing to put the music on and have a little bit of a dance. So we've had dances on the last day of the pop-ups, we've had dances when we're setting up. Find ways to inject fun and joy into the process of having your physical space, and share that with your community online if they're not able to be there in person. So I'm going to end this video by telling you a little bit more about my pop-up online course, if this is something that you're interested in. The online course is self-paced, which means that you can do it in your own time at your own speed, and it has 31 classes including videos, checklists, practical resources, and I share all of the insight and experience that I have from running my own pop-up concept stores. This pop-up online course will help you go from your idea to have a pop-up to successful execution of that, and it will save you time, money, but most importantly, by giving you the blueprint, it will take away the overwhelming feeling that you have when you know that you have a pop-up shop launching in a few weeks or a few months and you just don't know where to start because you haven't done it before. That brings us to the end of this video. Thank you so much for spending time with me. If you found this information useful, please subscribe to my channel and click on the notification bell in the section below. Also, I'm going to stick a couple of videos. We have lots of other business content that you might find useful, so I will see you in the next video.